Hidden inside the gemstone world is a truth experts rarely admit. Some of the most valuable stones ever discovered were sold long before anyone understood what they really were. Not mistakes, not accidents, but silent losses, buried inside parcels, mislabeled in drawers, traded away for a fraction of their future worth. Stones born from geological conditions that may never return. Stones pulled from mines that closed before the world learned their names. Stones so rare that only a handful of collectors have ever held them. And yet, many of them passed through the hands of experts who believed they were ordinary. This countdown exposes the top 10 gemstones experts secretly regret selling. The quiet misjudgments, the forgotten discoveries, the vanished opportunities that reshaped the gem trade without warning. Some of these stones were mistaken for cheaper gems. Some skyrocketed in value after the last quality crystal left the earth. Some are now so scarce that their early sales are spoken about with a kind of disbelief. But the gemstone at number 1 is a story the industry still struggles to explain. A stone so rare, so misunderstood, that a single sale can represent a lifetime of regret. As this list unfolds, one question becomes impossible to ignore. If experts miss these stones, what could the rest of the world be overlooking right now? Don't forget to press and hold that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe before we begin. Ranked 10th. Hauyne. The neon blue gem experts regret selling too soon. In the gemstone world, a few minerals carry stories of quiet disappearance, stones that slipped through the market before anyone realized what they truly were. Hauyne is one of those rare cases. Formed deep inside the volcanic fields of Germany's Eifel region, this neon blue mineral spent decades overlooked, admired only as an unusual curiosity rather than a gem-worthy treasure. Hauyne's color is unlike anything commonly seen in nature. It is not the royal depth of sapphire, nor the soft celestial tone of blue spinel. Instead, it shines with a vivid electric saturation, almost as if the stone produces its own light. Under the lamp, it glows with a cold, luminous intensity that once made traders hesitate. Some believed the color was too unusual, too bright, too unstable to be taken seriously. For years, stones passed through expert hands with little more than a nod of interest. Yet hidden inside that hesitation was a critical misjudgment. Unlike most blue gemstones, Hauyne does not come from deep metamorphic belts or predictable pegmatite veins. Its birthplace is far more volatile. Gas-rich volcanic chambers where pressure, chemistry, and eruption timing align in a narrow geological miracle. These conditions are so specific that even slight changes in the volcanic environment can end Hauyne formation entirely. That fragility became evident over time. The regions in Germany that once produced fine material became more protected, more restricted, and more difficult to access. What had once been a small but steady flow of stones gradually slowed, then nearly stopped altogether. As supply tightened, collectors began to look more closely at the stones buried in old drawers and forgotten parcels. Stones that, only a decade earlier, were considered trivial. What they rediscovered was something extraordinary. A gemstone whose neon tone cannot be replicated, whose geological origin cannot be replaced, and whose presence in the market had dwindled to the point of near disappearance. Laboratories confirmed its rarity. Auction houses reported sudden demand spikes. Collectors began sharing stories of small pieces that had once been sold cheaply, pieces now viewed as irreplaceable. And as those stories resurfaced, a quiet realization spread through the gem community. Hauyne had crossed the line from undervalued oddity to stone experts genuinely regret letting go. For many, it became a reminder that rarity is not always visible at first glance, and that some stones reveal their importance only after the world runs out of them. Hauyne embodies that lesson with striking clarity. Its glow, once dismissed, is now the reason collectors hunt for every fragment that remains. Its volatility, once seen as a flaw, is now part of its allure, and its scarcity, once overlooked, is now impossible to ignore. As this story unfolds, one question naturally rises. Where would Hauyne belong on your personal ranking of stones that were sold too soon? The audience often has sharper insight than the market once did. So any ranking shared below helps shape the next chapter of this conversation. Ranked 9th. Kornerupine. the gem that hid in plain sight because everyone expected something else. Human perception has a subtle flaw. When something resembles what is familiar, the mind stops looking deeper. This bias, often unspoken, leads to missed opportunities, overlooked details, and in the gem world, stones that slip through the cracks simply because they look close enough to something else. Kornerupine became one of the most extraordinary victims of that flaw. For decades, traders, cutters, and collectors saw a green crystal that behaved like tourmaline, cut like tourmaline, and carried a color palette close enough to tourmaline that few bothered to question it. And because the mind tends to categorize quickly, the stone was placed into a box it never belonged in. As parcels moved from hand to hand, Kornerupine traveled the world under the wrong name, the wrong price, and the wrong level of attention. Yet beneath that mistaken identity lay a mineral far rarer than the stone it was confused with. Kornerupine forms only under high-pressure metamorphic conditions that require a precise balance of boron, magnesium, and silica. Conditions that appear briefly, then vanish for geological ages. This fleeting formation makes fine Kornerupine astonishingly scarce. Only a few regions, Sri Lanka, Tanzania, Madagascar, Myanmar, have produced stones worth cutting, and even among these locations, transparent material remains rare. Those who encountered fine pieces decades ago had little reason to suspect they were holding something special. Pleochroic shifts were dismissed as a quirk. The smoky teal-green hue was noted but not celebrated. Many stones were sold quickly, their value determined by what they resembled instead of what they were. Only years later did gemological laboratories begin uncovering the truth in old collections. Specimens long assumed to be tourmaline were actually Kornerupine of exceptional quality. By the time this revelation spread, the landscape had already changed. Mining activity decreased, production thinned, and the supply of clean, vivid Kornerupine, already limited, was recognized as dangerously close to exhaustion. What once moved anonymously through the market suddenly became a target for collectors searching for rarity with scientific depth. Today, Kornerupine stands as a reminder of how deeply assumptions can obscure value. Its colors carry subtle complexities that reward patience. Its scarcity places it among the most challenging stones to source ethically, and its history reflects a market that only realized what it lost after the opportunity had passed. And as Kornerupine's true identity comes into focus, one discussion inevitably opens. Does this stone truly deserve a higher position on the list? Or does its rarity still remain underestimated? Your view adds an important piece to this debate. Viewers who have encountered mislabeled stones often share the most revealing insights, making this the perfect moment to add personal observations. Ranked 8th, Poudretteite. The pink gem that disappeared before its name was even known. Some gemstones earn their reputation through centuries of admiration. Others become famous only after countless hands have touched them. But a rare few rise to prominence in the opposite direction, vanishing before the world even learns how to pronounce their name. Poudretteite belongs to that final category, a gemstone whose absence became known long before its presence was truly understood. Discovered in the mid-20th century within the complex mineral environment of Mont-Saint-Hilaire in Quebec, Poudretteite did not arrive with fanfare. The early material appeared in tiny crystals, too small, too fractured, too modest to attract commercial interest. As a result, the mineral remained a scientific curiosity, classified and cataloged but rarely celebrated. Specialists saw it as an intriguing footnote in a region already known for producing unusual minerals. Then something unexpected happened. A handful of crystals displayed a clarity and size previously unseen, large enough to cut, clean enough to polish, and vivid enough to reveal a soft, ethereal pink rarely found in other minerals. For the first time, Poudretteite stepped out of obscurity and into the realm of true gemstones. But this moment of recognition came far too late. By the time collectors realized the gem's potential, access to Mont-Saint-Hilaire had tightened significantly. Environmental restrictions grew, permissions diminished. The geological zone that once yielded thousands of microscopic crystals produced virtually none of cutting-grade quality. Any hope for further significant discoveries faded, leaving the market with only a handful of stones, most of them hidden in old collections, forgotten drawers, or mislabeled parcels. Experts who sold early examples rarely realized what they had let go. To many, the name Poudretteite meant little, and stones under 1 carat appeared unremarkable compared to established pink gems. Only later did gemological publications highlight its extreme rarity, confirming that gem-quality Poudretteite ranks among the rarest pink stones in existence, rarer than many varieties that dominate modern auctions. As awareness spread, the market reacted sharply. Even small, lightly included stones became prized. Clean specimens surpassed expectations, and the realization emerged that Poudretteite had completed a near-impossible transformation, from an overlooked mineral to a gemstone, with demand far exceeding its supply. Today, the number of fine Poudretteite stones available worldwide is counted not in thousands nor hundreds, but in dozens. Most are already held by dedicated collectors and are unlikely to reappear for sale. The stone story stands as a reminder of how quickly a mineral can shift from scientific curiosity to irreplaceable asset, and how many experts underestimated what time would reveal. In moments like this, one question naturally surfaces. Is Poudretteite one of the rarest pink gems ever discovered? Or does its brief appearance in the market create an illusion stronger than reality? Opinions often vary sharply, and this contrast makes viewer insights especially valuable. Ranked 7th, Pezzottaite, the gem that rose fast, vanished faster, and left experts behind. Markets usually change slowly. Prices shift in predictable patterns. Supply adapts over years, not months. Yet once in a while, a gemstone erupts into the trade with such intensity and disappears with such speed that even seasoned experts struggle to understand what happened. Pezzottaite is the embodiment of this rare phenomenon. Introduced to the gem world in the early 2000s, Pezzottaite captured immediate attention with its saturated raspberry pink hue, a color striking enough to rival the finest morganite and unlike anything commonly seen in the beryl family. Its discovery in Madagascar created a surge of excitement. Here was a new gem species with a vivid tone, strong pleochroism, and an optical personality that felt fresh, modern, and unmistakably rare. Because new gemstones rarely gain traction without decades of history, the sudden demand for Pezzottaite surprised many in the trade. Stones sold rapidly, often before labs had fully cataloged their behavior. Dealers treated it as a promising newcomer, assuming the Madagascar deposit would support a steady market for years to come. But this assumption would not hold. Just as interest climbed, the geological reality of Pezzottaite revealed itself. The primary vein producing high-quality material was far smaller than anticipated, and the structure of the deposit made extraction inconsistent and dangerous. Within a remarkably short time, availability shrank. Parcels that once appeared monthly became quarterly, then sporadic, then absent entirely. The supply collapsed while demand continued rising, a combination that always catches experts at the worst possible moment. As gemological studies expanded, labs confirmed that Pezzottaite was not a variety of morganite, nor a simple color variant, but a distinct species with cesium-rich chemistry. Its identity elevated its status, but by then most of the finest stones had already been sold under earlier assumptions. Many pieces now recognized as exceptional had moved through the market long before their rarity became obvious. Collectors who managed to acquire top-color examples began holding them tightly. Auction interest increased, and as with all gems that appear suddenly and vanish before prices stabilize, regret followed swiftly. Experts reviewed past sales and realized the gap between early prices and current value reflected an opportunity that had slipped away almost instantly. Today, fine Pezzottaite is far scarcer than most mainstream collectors realize. Clean stones above 1 carat are rarely seen. Larger stones are near legends, and the market retains a sharp memory of just how quickly a promising newcomer transformed into a gemstone nearly impossible to replace. This rapid rise and abrupt disappearance raise an intriguing question. Should stones with such brief production windows be treated as long-term collectibles? Or does their rarity rely too heavily on a single vanished deposit? Diverging opinions on this point often reveal how each viewer interprets the balance between beauty, scarcity, and timing. Ranked 6th, Jeremejevite, the ice blue gem that revealed its identity, only after it had already disappeared. The turning point in Jeremejevite's story came not from a major discovery, but from a quiet correction, one that arrived years too late. Early crystals found their way into the market under entirely different names, passed along as clean, topaz, or pale aquamarine. Their sharp clarity and high brilliance made the confusion seem reasonable at the time. Yet within those misidentified stones lay a mineral far rarer than either of the gems it resembled. The true nature of Jeremejevite became clear only after laboratories began revisiting older collections. As spectroscopic tests and refractive index measurements confirm what the eyes alone could not, a startling realization emerged. Some of the crystals sold casually in earlier years belonged to one of the rarest transparent minerals ever recorded. This discovery reshaped the stones standing in an instant, but by then most of the finest examples had long since circulated out of the hands that originally held them. Unlike more established blue gemstones, Jeremejevite forms under geological conditions that produce very little transparent material. Only specific pegmatites, primarily in Namibia, yield crystals with the clarity needed for facetting. Even then, these deposits are inconsistent, producing fine stones in one season and nothing at all in the next. The unpredictable nature of its formation ensured that the supply would never stabilize, leaving the market with brief surges of availability followed by long stretches of silence. This irregularity explains why so many early stones were undervalued. Traders simply had no reason to expect that the material passing through their hands was extraordinary. The rarity was not yet visible, and without a steady flow of new specimens, the gem could not build the reputation it eventually earned. By the time awareness spread, the chance to obtain exceptional stones had largely faded. As Jeremejevite's identity became clearer, demand grew rapidly among collectors seeking gems defined by rarity rather than trend. Auctions began featuring stones that would once have been overlooked. Private buyers competed for pieces that combined high clarity with the mineral's signature ice blue tone. And as the gap widened between the early selling price and the emerging market value, the depth of earlier misjudgments became more apparent. Today, Jeremejevite occupies a unique place in the gem trade. A stone that feels both ethereal and elusive, admired for a color that echoes winter light and respected for a scarcity that borders on absolute. Only a small number of transparent stones exist in circulation, and many are already locked within long-term collections. This combination of delicate beauty and geological scarcity naturally raises a question that continues to divide collectors. Is Jeremejevite one of the most underestimated losses in the history of modern gem trading? Or does its vanishing act simply reflect the natural limits of a stone too rare to anchor a stable market? Each interpretation offers a different perspective on how value and regret is shaped in the world of exceptional minerals. Ranked fifth, Grandidierite, the ocean-colored gem born before anyone realized the world would run out of it. At the edges of mineral exploration, there are stones that appear not with a surge of excitement, but with a quiet uncertainty. Grandidierite belonged to this frontier for decades, a mineral that seemed to occupy the thin boundary between the familiar and the unknown, revealing just enough beauty to spark curiosity, but not enough transparency to suggest anything revolutionary. For many years it existed in that gray area, admired in theory but rarely pursued in practice. That perception changed only when the first transparent crystals emerged, crystals whose color painted a scene unlike anything else in the gem trade. The tone of fine Grandidierite carries a depth that suggests water rather than stone, a hue that resembles the place where ocean meets shadow. As light moves across the gem, its pleochroism shifts from rich teal to deep blue to a whispering green, creating an optical effect that feels more alive than mineral. Yet this extraordinary appearance is the product of geological forces that almost never align. Grandidierite forms only when boron, magnesium, and iron converge under precise pressures and temperatures in metamorphic rock systems, a combination so improbable that even regions known for mineral diversity produce only trace amounts. The portions of Madagascar capable of generating transparent material were never large, and even within those narrow zones, fine quality crystals appeared only in rare pockets. Because of this scarcity, Many stones that would eventually become prized were once traded with little deliberation. Early specimens, opaque, fibrous, or too included to cut, shaped the mineral's reputation as an interesting curiosity rather than a future collectible. Experts made assumptions based on what was visible at the time, unaware that the next chapter would reshape everything. When Phosphophyllite Grandidierite finally reached the market, the shift was immediate and dramatic. The rarity that had gone unnoticed for decades suddenly became undeniable. Auctions began listing stones with increasing frequency, not because they were abundant, but because each appearance felt like an event. Private collectors sought pieces with strong saturation and clarity, recognizing that the window for acquiring such stones was closing quickly. As mining continued, the truth emerged. The geological conditions that produced fine Grandidierite were nearly exhausted. Extraction became more challenging. The availability of high-quality crystals declined, and experts who once sold stones at modest prices began to reflect on decisions made before the market understood the significance of what it had lost. Today, Grandidierite stands among the most coveted blue-green gemstones in existence. Clean stones above 1 carat occupy a category of rarity that rivals some of the most prized minerals in modern collecting. Many of the finest pieces are already held by long-term collectors, and their return to the market remains uncertain. This evolution prompts a deeper conversation. Is Grandidierite valued for its captivating color, or has the awareness of its geological fragility amplified its appeal beyond the stone itself? The answer often reflects how each viewer interprets the thin line between natural beauty and natural impossibility. Ranked fourth, Phosphophyllite, the gem so beautiful and fragile that experts regretted letting it slip away. Value in the gemstone world often comes from rarity, color, or brilliance, but Phosphophyllite belongs to a different category entirely. Its worth is shaped by what it cannot endure. This gemstone sits at the center of a paradox, admired for a beauty that few stones can match, yet too delicate to survive the very processes that usually bring gems into the spotlight. That paradox shaped its destiny and created one of the deepest regrets among experts who once underestimated it. Phosphophyllite's color sets it apart immediately. A pure glacial blue-green tone radiates from within, capturing a transparency that feels almost unreal. Under soft lighting, it takes on a watery glow, the kind of luminous subtlety that seems more like a delicate reflection than a solid mineral. Collectors often describe the stone's appearance as a moment of stillness, calm, cold, and impossibly clean. But beneath this serene beauty lies a structure barely capable of holding itself together. The mineral's atomic bonds are arranged in a configuration that renders it unusually brittle. Even minor vibrations can cause internal fractures. Pressure from extraction alone can destroy a promising crystal, and the process of cutting, which transforms most rough stones into gems, poses an extreme risk. Countless potential specimens never survive long enough to be polished, leaving only a fraction of the material suitable for faceting. Because of this fragility, early Phosphophyllite rarely inspired urgency in the trade. Many pieces were sold for modest prices, valued more for their novelty than their potential. Experts assumed additional material would surface eventually, if not from Bolivia, then from another source. The possibility that the supply could end abruptly seemed unlikely. But the Earth had other plans. As mining in the major Bolivian deposits slowed, the revelation became clear. Phosphophyllite Phosphophyllite was not just rare, it was nearly unobtainable. The combination of difficult extraction, structural weakness, and dwindling deposits meant that each surviving stone was a geological accident. What seemed like a curiosity decades earlier transformed into one of the most irreplaceable gems in existence. Auction records began to reflect the shift. Small stones, once ignored, commanded extraordinary attention. Museum-grade specimens became treasures. And as recognition spread, many experts revisited earlier transactions, realizing that the stones they had sold or overlooked represented opportunities that would never return. Today, the chance of finding a clean, cuttable Phosphophyllite is almost non-existent. Most of the finest examples rest in long-term collections, protected not only for their beauty, but for the understanding that future discoveries may never match what nature created once and then quietly retracted. This fragile legacy leads to a thoughtful question for viewers. Does the true value of phosphophyllite lie in its breathtaking color, or in the knowledge that so few examples survive the forces that shaped them? Different interpretations highlight how each person sees beauty, rarity, and loss in the world of extraordinary gemstones. Ranked third, Serendibite, the jet-black rarity that shattered price expectations overnight. The modern gem market still remembers the first time a fine Serendibite specimen appeared at a major auction. What was expected to be a quiet listing, a small, opaque stone known mainly to mineral collectors, transformed into a bidding contest that no one predicted. Within minutes, prices climbed past every estimate, surpassing stones with far more established reputations. That single moment forced the entire industry to reconsider what had quietly slipped through its hands. Serendibite is not a gemstone that courts attention. In its most common form, it appears as a deep, inky black mineral, subtle, muted, almost understated. But this modest appearance hides an extreme rarity. Transparent Serendibite, the kind capable of being cut into gemstones, is among the rarest forms of crystallized mineral matter ever discovered. Only a handful of crystals have achieved face-stable quality, and most of them surfaced before the gem world fully understood their significance. For decades, the stone moved in near anonymity. Many early samples came from Sri Lanka, where miners encountered it in small pockets alongside other minerals. Without a strong market identity or visual drama, fine pieces were sold quietly, sometimes lumped into mixed parcels or mislabeled entirely. Few traders considered the possibility that the material was rarer than sapphire, ruby, or even many collector-grade spinels. This early invisibility became one of the greatest losses in modern gem trading. As gemological research advanced, laboratory results began confirming the truth. The handful of transparent Serendibite crystals circulating in the market were geological anomalies, likely never to be found in large quantities again. Their chemistry, formation conditions, and extreme scarcity set them apart from almost anything previously documented. Once this information reached collectors, the marketplace responded with unprecedented speed. Auction houses began featuring the stone. Private buyers competed fiercely for even small faceted examples. Prices soared, not because of trend or hype, but because the scarcity was absolute, unchangeable, unrepeatable, and scientifically confirmed. Experts reviewing past transactions quickly realized how many exceptional stones had been sold before the world recognized their importance. Serendibite's color adds to its mystique. In faceted form, it appears as an intense, near velvety black-blue with flashes of deep navy under strong light. It is a color rarely encountered in gem-quality material, created by trace elements interacting in a way that borders on geological miracle. This unique visual identity, combined with its near-legendary rarity, gave the stone a level of prestige few expected. Today, faceted Serendibite belongs to a category shared by only a handful of gems, stones that most collectors will never see in person, let alone own. Its scarcity is so extreme that many experts consider it one of the greatest lost opportunities in the history of gemstone trading. This dramatic transformation raises an intriguing question for anyone studying the market's evolution. Did Serendibite become valuable because collectors finally recognized its rarity, or has its scarcity always represented a missed chance that the trade realized far too late? Each answer adds a unique viewpoint to one of the gem world's most surprising success stories. Ranked second, Taaffeite, the gem that revealed its true identity only after it had already been sold. The story of Taaffeite begins with one of the most unusual events in gemological history, the realization that a stone already cut, polished, and sold was not what anyone thought it was. When a small purplish pink gem in a parcel of spinels was examined more closely decades ago, its optical behavior raised questions that the market had never considered. That single stone, mislabeled, mispriced, and misunderstood, marked the discovery of a new mineral, a gemstone so rare that its early sales would later become some of the industry's most painful regrets. Taaffeite occupies a space almost no other gemstone shares. Its color range, stretching from soft lavender to deep magenta, resembles spinel closely enough to confuse even skilled traders. Its refractive qualities sit somewhere between sapphire and chrysoberyl, creating optical traits that resisted quick identification. Before gemological testing became widespread, Taaffeite simply hid in plain sight, passing from hand to hand under the wrong name. This misidentification shaped its early history. Because Taaffeite crystals are typically small, flat, and difficult to facet, most early examples were overlooked entirely. They entered the market mixed within parcels of spinel, or chrysoberyl, priced as ordinary goods. Dealers rarely questioned their identity. Even laboratories had limited reference material at the time. Years passed before the trade realized that the stones it treated casually represented one of the rarest gem species ever discovered. Once laboratories began confirming specimens, the truth became impossible to ignore. Taaffeite was not just rare, it was astonishingly rare. Geological evidence suggested its formation required an intersection of environmental conditions so specific that only a handful of mines in Sri Lanka and Tanzania ever produced gem-quality crystals. Even within these deposits, transparent material appeared in microscopic quantities. Most stones found were too small or included to cut. Faceable pieces were nearly miraculous. By the time the trade understood this, the damage had already been done. Many of the best stones had been sold decades earlier for a fraction of their true value. Some had been mounted into inexpensive jewelry. Others vanished entirely into private drawers, mislabeled and forgotten. Experts began recounting stories of parcels they once handled, parcels containing stones they would never see again. Recognition brought a rapid shift in demand. Taaffeite moved from obscurity to reverence among high-level collectors. Even tiny faceted examples became sought after. Clean stones above 1 carat entered the realm of museum-grade rarity. Auction listings, once non-existent, began drawing global attention. Today, Taaffeite stands as one of the clearest examples of a gemstone whose value was realized far too late. Its scarcity is absolute, its appearance deceptively modest, and its history filled with transactions that now seem unthinkable. Among experts, few stones inspire as strong a sense of, if only that one had been kept. This tale of misjudgment invites a compelling reflection. Was Taaffeite's early anonymity its greatest tragedy, or is its rarity precisely what gives it the power to rewrite its own value today? Viewer interpretations often reveal how deeply each person connects rarity with regret in the gem world. In first place, Musgravite, the ultra-rare gem that experts now wish had never left their hands. The rise of Musgravite is often described not as a trend, but as an awakening, an abrupt realization that shook the gemstone world when it was almost too late. For years, this mineral existed in the background, passed along quietly within parcels of spinel, or ignored due to its unassuming appearance. Then came the moment that rewrote its history. A high-grade Musgravite specimen appeared at a major auction and achieved a valuation so extreme that it stunned even the most experienced collectors. Overnight, the narrative changed. Musgravite was no longer obscure. It was irreplaceable. What makes Musgravite extraordinary is not merely its beauty, but the geological impossibility of its creation. Originating from remote regions, such as the Musgrave Ranges in Australia, and limited pockets in Tanzania and Sri Lanka, the mineral forms only when precise pressures and rare chemical interactions align. These conditions occur so infrequently that even areas known to host the mineral rarely produce transparent crystals. Most stones found are too included or too small to cut, leaving only a tiny fraction suitable for faceting. Before its identity was fully understood, many experts handled Musgravite without realizing the significance of what they held. Its gray-green to smoky lavender color resembled rare spinels, and its optical behavior added to the confusion. Stones were often traded casually, mislabeled, or sold for prices far below their eventual value. The absence of market awareness meant that early transactions went unnoticed, until scientific confirmation revealed just how extraordinary the mineral truly was. As gemological laboratories began documenting its properties, the scope of the oversight became clear. Gem-quality Musgravite was not rare in the usual sense. It was extraordinarily rare, nearly unmatched in the world of transparent minerals. Fewer than a few dozen faceted stones of significant size had ever been confirmed. Many of the best specimens had been sold already, long before their importance was recognized. Once this knowledge spread, the trade reacted with unprecedented urgency. Collectors who specialized in ultra-rare minerals began competing fiercely for stones. Auction houses reevaluated their listings. Prices surged upward in a way that felt less like appreciation and more like a correction. And the regret within the expert community deepened. Those who had once held Musgravite and let it go now understood that such opportunities might never exist again. Musgravite's visual qualities only amplify its allure. In high-quality stones, subtle hues shift between smoky violet, steely gray, and muted green depending on lighting. The gem's understated elegance gives it a quiet power, a look that does not compete for attention, but commands it. This restrained beauty combined with extreme scarcity places Musgravite in a class of its own. Today, Musgravite is considered one of the rarest and most coveted gemstones in existence. The number of confirmed faceted stones remains incredibly small, and the likelihood of future discoveries remains uncertain at best. For many experts, it symbolizes the greatest example of selling too early, of letting go of a stone whose story had not yet been written. This realization leads to a powerful question for anyone fascinated by rarity. Is Musgravite's value defined by its extreme scarcity, or by the collective regret of the experts who discovered its significance only after it was gone? Reflections on this often reveal how deeply the gem trade is shaped by timing, knowledge, and missed opportunities. The stories behind these gemstones reveal a side of the trade rarely seen. The moments when knowledge arrived too late, when rarity was misunderstood, and when stones of extraordinary importance slipped away before their value was known. Each gem on this list carries its own lesson. Some vanished because the earth stopped producing them. Some were misidentified and sold for a fraction of their worth. Others rose in value only after the last great specimen left human hands. Together, they show how easily even experts can overlook what time later reveals. As this chapter closes, one truth becomes clear. The next great regret in the gem world may already be out there, quiet, unnoticed, waiting for its moment. For those watching, your perspective matters. Which gemstone on this list felt like the biggest loss? And which one deserves even more recognition? Share your thoughts below and prepare for the next episode. A deeper look into the stones shaping the future of collecting and the secrets the market has yet to uncover.